Hey there everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today we are diving back into the wonderful world of Button Shy. So it has been a hot minute since we've talked about a Button Shy game, and the one they have coming for their kind of monthly Kickstarter in September is one that I'm really excited to share with you guys. And so Embers is designed by Aramini, who is a pretty well-known name in the Button Shy space, and has fantastic art by Waele. Embers is a game about controlling a group of heroes around a campfire and trying to survive waves of horrific monsters and trying to survive until the morning. So Embers is going to be made up of one card used to keep track of what time of the night we're in, essentially a round tracker. It's going to be made up of 5 heroes, and then the rest of the cards are going to be dual-use cards that are going to have a campfire on one side and some really gnarly looking monsters on the other. So to set up the game of Embers, we are going to take our nighttime tracker, put it in the middle of the table with the 4 numbers showing up. And that's going to represent the kind of goal of the game, where we are going to go through the deck, and every time we go through the deck, we're going to reduce this card by 1 until eventually we make it to morning, and that's going to signify the end of the game if we can survive through that round. Now we're going to take the rest of the cards with our campfire side up. We're going to remove one to start our discard pile, also called the forage pile. And the rest of them we're going to shuffle, and we're going to put them on top of the nighttime tracker here, with the goal to get through all these cards and reveal that nighttime card so that we can progress the game. Once our center deck is set up, we're going to shuffle our 5 heroes, and we're going to put one on the top, right, bottom, and left side of the campfire. And our last hero here is going to go over into the tent. And the tent is kind of like a resting spot or like an overflow. So we're going to have 5 heroes. We can only ever have 4 out. But as the game goes on, you're going to see there's ways for our heroes to get damaged and get sent to the tent. And then ones that are waiting there, we can then redeploy into the campfire around the area here. So the actual kind of map, if you want to think of it that way, of Embers is going to be made up of 8 camp spots, and it's going to kind of be all around the fire. So you can see our heroes are occupying 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then 5, 6, 7, 8, and the corners are going to be opened up. And each spot can only hold 1 hero. And as you're going to see in a second, there is going to be monsters that are going to spawn on specific areas around this map that we are going to have to deal with and move our heroes around. So let's just go ahead and get started with the first kind of round, and I'll kind of explain things as we go on. So the first thing we're going to have to do in a round is spawn monsters. So we're going to take the top card, we're going to flip it over, which is going to reveal a monster card here. And then we're going to look at the next card. And it's going to have this little read out area that's going to tell us where we need to spawn this specific monster. But there is a catch. Monsters are not going to spawn in the same spot as a hero, right? They want to avoid our heroes because they're the ones that are going to be able to kill them. So we're going to look at our monster card. You're going to see they have this like paw print icon, and that is going to be their movement. So if we look at the bottom here, normally it would have to spawn right in this spot, but it can't because there's a hero here. So it's going to move clockwise equal to its number of movement points until it reaches an empty area. So to move 1 to the left, it hits an empty area, so it's going to hang out right here. And unlike heroes, monsters can stack in a single spot. So if we have to spawn more monsters, they're going to keep stacking and get into a bigger horde in one area of the map. So that is our first monster. So let's flip over our second one, which is going to go on the right. It has 2 movement, so it's going to move 1 down into the bottom right. We got to do our third one, which is going to spawn here, which is open, so it's just going to hang out right there. And then our last one is going to go to the left. This is occupied, it has 1 movement, so we'll move our last monster right into this top left space, and that's going to be our 4 monsters. We're always going to spawn monsters equal to the number of heroes. We have 4 heroes out, so we're going to spawn those monsters. And now the last thing to note after spawning monsters is that the top card of the campfire deck is going to have a specific condition. And so this one says, spawn this card as an additional monster, then ignore the newly revealed event. So lucky us, we're going to have to spawn a 5th monster for this round. We'll flip it over, and it's going to go in the top right. That one is a little bit of a special one because it's going to get played as a monster, but sometimes the other ones are going to have different round effects. Like this one, if monsters are stacked, only the top monster may be defeated. And so these are just going to be different round effects we're going to have to be aware of. But we actually don't have a round effect because they're just going to appear as an extra monster here. So after we are done spawning our monsters, we are going to go into our action phase, where our heroes are actually going to be able to do things around the map. So let's take a look at the different actions our heroes can actually do in the game. And so you're going to see they're all pretty much the same across the different hero cards. One of them is going to be this little shield icon. So we could spend 1 action point, and then we could defeat 1 monster in our area. The one to the right of that, that's kind of like this little log looking thing, that is going to be called foraging. And so like I said before, at the start of the game, we put one card into our forage deck over here, which kind of serves as a discard. We are able to take one of those cards, put it back in our hand, and that's going to allow us to put it back into the campfire deck, replenishing that deck and assuring that we don't run out of it. That is one of the loss conditions. If we run out of campfire cards, we are going to instantly lose. Now, the other thing we can do is this little hand, which is bolstering. So we could spend 2 actions to allow any other hero to do one single bonus action, or we can spend 2 actions to promote our heroes. So when we flip them over, you're going to see they have kind of an upgraded promoted side. So they're going to have more health. Typically, their actions are going to be more efficient, and they're just going to be much more powerful in that form. So if we don't have anything else we want our heroes to do, we can spend 2 actions and upgrade them into their promoted form. Now, the last action on each of these cards is kind of one of the most interesting wrinkles in this game, in my opinion, and that is going to be maneuvering. So every hero is going to have its own specific way that it's allowed to move around the campfire. And it's very specific. If you cannot complete the maneuver kind of condition, you can't use that action. So positioning around this fire is like the most important part, I think, in this game, and making sure your heroes are set up in a way that allows them to kind of combo off of each other. So let me run you through the different maneuvers that our different heroes are actually able to do. And so the forager here is able to do what's called a power slide. And all that means is that it's going to move any number of empty adjacent spaces until it ends up next to a hero. So where it is right now, I would just move it 1. It ends up next to the fire tender, and that's going to end their movement there. However, if the fire tender was down in this corner, she could power slide 1, 2, and move around the campfire that way. So that's going to be the forager. So the fire tender has what actually is my favorite maneuver in the game, and that is going to be jumping over the fire. So the fire tender could go here, jump over to the left. Now you might notice that this is an occupied space, and I said that multiple heroes can't be in the same space. So if that is the case, the fire tender can then choose to move either adjacent spots to this hero if they're open. So I could jump over here, and I can go up, or I could go down. However, if all of these spots were taken up and I tried to jump here, I wouldn't be able to do a maneuver because I couldn't fulfill that specific condition. Now the leader here has the most straightforward, but probably the most valuable one, where you're just going to move one adjacent space and kind of freely do that, which is really important when you're trying to set up these other conditions for other heroes to move. Being able to move and slide one additional spot is going to be extremely, extremely valuable. Now, the last one to talk about is the defender here, and what he is going to do is leap over his allies. So, if the leader was here, the defender could then choose to leap right over her into the next open spot. If the fire tender was here, he would leap over 2 and move all that spaces, and then if somehow the forager was here, he would leap over all 3 of them into the next open spot. So he can do some kind of wacky stuff. If you're able to really line up your heroes, he can do huge leaps over many of his allies. So that is pretty much the gist of actions right there. We can maneuver to move, we can defend to beat monsters, we can forage to bring these cards back into our hand, or we could bolster or promote. So I've mentioned a couple times there's ways to replenish the campfire deck here. And the 2 ways we're going to do that is by foraging and by defeating monsters. So whenever we do those 2 actions, when we forage, we take it from the discard and put it back in our hand. When we defeat monsters, we clear them off the board and add them to our hand. After we're done taking all of our actions, any cards that are in our hand, we're going to shuffle them together and they're going to go into the bottom of the campfire deck. So we're going to have a chance to redraw them as we continue going through and through the deck. And now this is important because the main loss condition for the game is going to be if we ever run out of campfire cards, the game instantly loses. So an important part of that is when we spawn monsters, right? If there's not enough cards in the campfire deck in order to spawn the amount of monsters we need, that is going to be a loss, right? We run out of cards and that ends the game. Now, before we get into the rest of the round, let's go through the actions and then I'll tell you guys what happens after that, where the monsters are actually going to attack us back. With our setup here, we have 5 monsters, which is kind of pretty nasty to be honest, but I think we can kind of work with this here. So let's go ahead and start with the fire tender, because I think he can jump over 1, and then he's going to move up into the top left here. So he is now in the same space as these 2 monsters here. So I have 1 remaining action left, so I'm going to use that action in order to defeat one of these monsters, and I could choose to defeat either one of them. And these different icons that are damaged, I'll explain in a sec once we get through this, but I'm going to choose to get rid of the one that is going to have 2 damage icons, because I think that is generally good. So once we defeat that monster, I'm just going to keep it in front of me here, campfire side up, so that I remember that I need to shuffle these back in after all our actions are done. So our fire tender there is all done with his actions. So I think I see a good spot for maybe the forager to slide down to the bottom right and maybe go ahead and kill this monster here. So let's go ahead and do that. So it's going to slide all the way down to the next adjacent spot next to an ally. And I'm going to use my second action to defeat this creature here, adding it to my hand. Okay, so now our defender and our leader still has some actions to do. And we're kind of in a weird spot here, to be totally honest. I think I'm going to move my leader one spot to the left and choose to defend against this creature, defeating it. And now my defender is kind of sandwiched here. He could leap this way or this way, but that's not going to leave him in any spots with creatures. So I think what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to spend 2 actions to bolster and let my fire tender do a free action. And so I'm going to use that to defeat this last monster. So we're still going to have one hanging out here, but considering we had an extra spawn there, I think that's pretty good for the first round. Now, after we do all of our actions, we're going to take all of these cards, I'm going to shuffle them up, and then they are going to be put at the bottom of the campfire deck there. Now that all of our actions are done, we are going to go into the third phase of the round, which is going to be monsters attacking. So we're going to look at all the monsters that are still around, that are surrounding us, and resolve each of them one by one as a group. So right now we only have one creature here, so that's pretty easy to do. And so here it's going to have 3 movement, which doesn't matter when we're determining attack, but it's going to have one of these claw marks. And those claw marks are going to be damage against heroes. So it's going to look at the closest hero from where it is. So right now we have an equal amount from the forager and the fire tender here, so we could choose to damage either of them. Now the way damage is going to work in this game is that if you ever take damage equal to or over the amount of health you have, your hero is going to go and get sent back to the tent to heal up. And every level 1 hero is going to have 1 health, so this is going to knock out somebody. And I'm going to choose to knock out the forager. I like the fire tender. I like being able to dance around and jump over the fire. So I'm going to say, okay, the forager is going to take that 1 point of damage, and it's going to get sent back to the tent here. Now, let me just show you guys one more monster here to kind of show you the other type of damage that can happen in the game, and that is going to be fire damage, where it has this little fire with a cross through it. And so when we take fire damage, we have to discard from our campfire equal to the amount of fire damage that we're taking. And so that is a very dangerous way for us to lose a lot of cards very quickly, is that if a lot of creatures with fire damage show up and they start ganging up on the fire, that's going to really burn through our deck really quite quickly. But luckily we don't have to deal with that for this round. And I will quickly mention that the fire tender, in addition to having really cool movement, his evolved version has a way to help us reduce taking fire damage. So if we end up leveling him up, I will point that out. But just something to keep in mind, that the fire tender is kind of unique in a way that he directly is able to kind of mitigate some of that fire damage. After we have resolved all of our monster attacks, we now have a chance to what's called reinforce. And what reinforcing is going to do is allow us to take heroes that are in our tent that weren't put here this round, so we can't just put the forager back into the battlefield after they just got hurt, but we can take other heroes that might be there and put them back out into our campfire area here. So we're going to take the scout, who has been waiting and ready to go, and we can put him in any empty spot. So we can't put him in the spot with the monster, but we could put him on the top, bottom right, or the right. So let me talk about the scout real quick, who is our last hero to talk about their maneuver abilities. So he has what is called a running jump, which in my opinion is kind of the trickiest movement to set up here. And what he has to do is that he has to move into an empty space that is next to another person, and then like the defender, he can jump over any number of heroes. So if the scout was here, he can move 1 into an open spot, and then he can jump over everyone else and then land here. But in the games that I've played, this has been the trickiest maneuver to set up, because you kind of need an empty spot, and then you kind of need to line up your heroes after that. So kind of tricky. But just thinking about where things are right now, I do actually think this is the best place, because this does kind of set him up for a running jump. Like the example I just showed you, I think it's pretty good. So I'm actually just going to leave him in the bottom right here. And so once we do that reinforce, it's going to end kind of the turn, and then we're going to go back into the spawn monster phase, and we're going to keep doing that until we get through enough of the deck to reveal that nighttime card. And I will keep playing, and then I'll kind of show you guys what that nighttime card does when we actually get to it. And if you're enjoying this video, please consider liking and subscribing to join the channel. I do a lot of playthroughs, reviews, previews, and all sorts of board game content, and I would love to have you on board. Anyway, back to our nighttime survival. So first thing we're going to do is spawn 4 monsters. So we're going to look at 1, which is going to go in the top right and join his buddy here. We're going to get number 2, which is going to go in the bottom right, which has a hero, and it only has 1 movement, so it's going to go 1 here to the defender, so he's looking to get whacked very, very soon. Then we're going to spawn our 4th, oh no, this is our 3rd, because that one's already hanging out there, who's going to go at the very top up here. And now we're going to spawn our last monster here, which is going to have a movement of 3, and he wants to go down the bottom left corner. So he's going to go 1, 2, and 3. So the top of our map is looking really dicey up here. We're going to have to get some reinforcements and try to shore that up. But that is going to be the end of monster spawning. And now I'll point out, look at the campfire effect. No heroes may bolster, so we're not able to use that bolster action at all, which obviously we made good use of in the first round, so it's kind of sad to lose the ability to do that, but we will get through that. And I think I see a good combo with the defender and the scout to try to trim down some of these monsters up here. So I'm going to start with the scout. The scout's going to go 1, and then he's going to jump over everybody into the next empty spot at the top. That's 1 action. And the second action, I'm going to kill off one of these monsters. And one of these monsters is doing 2 fire damage, so I'm going to choose to take out this guy here. So that's our scout's actions. Now the defender is able to do his leap, and now that I put the scout here, I can jump over both of these and end up in the top right, and he's going to be able to trim down some of the monsters that are up here. And so I'm going to kill this one that has fire damage. So this guy's been around for a while. He's been around since the start of the game. That's the 2 actions for my defender. And now for the leader, I'm going to shift her up 1 spot adjacent, and then her second action will be taking out this monster. And that leaves us with our fire tender, which would be awesome to bolster if we could, but we can't because of the round effect. So I don't really know what I want to do with him. And I think what I might do is I'm going to actually promote him. So I'm going to spend his 2 actions, and I'm going to promote him to level 2. And so like I mentioned before, the fire tender has a really cool ability where if he's in the spot that's taking fire damage, he is able to negate one of those points of damage. It's not going to matter here because he doesn't have anyone in his spot doing fire damage, but now we can kind of think about that as we start to position him in future turns. So that is going to be all of our heroes' actions here. So we're going to move into the enemies attacking us. And the first thing that's going to happen is, let's do this one. So he's going to do 1 point of damage, and he's going to take the defender out, who still only has 1 health. And so this guy's going to do 1 point of fire damage, and he's going to force us to take the top card of the campfire deck and put it on the bottom of the forage deck. So we're going to have to do some forage actions in order to get these cards back. Actually, one thing I forgot to do that I think you're technically supposed to do before monster attacks is I should have taken the monsters I defeated and put them on the bottom of the deck here. Because if we have to discard, those cards are back in the deck so that we can count them in case we do run out of cards. You should replenish those beforehand. It doesn't matter in this case, but just kind of trying to remember the correct order of operations here. So those 2 have done their damage. We now have a chance to reinforce. So we're going to send our forager back. And the forager has power slide. So I'm going to put her in the corner here because then she can kind of slide this way or slide this way depending on what monsters spawn next. Okay, so with that reinforce done, we're going to move into our next turn. And so we're going to spawn some monsters. So we're going to spawn the first one. And here we have hit our nighttime tracker card. So when we see this, the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to reduce it by 1. So now instead of 4, we're on 3. And we're also going to have a chance to get a free level up. So there's this little icon next to the number here. And what that means is that we can level up any one of our heroes for free. So I think our forage deck is getting kind of chunky here. So I'm going to level up the forage hero because what she will do when she's level 2 is that her forage action is going to actually get 2 of these cards from the forage deck instead of just 1. So pretty powerful ability. So we are going to go ahead and level her up. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is put this back at the bottom of the deck. So we're going to look at the next card to do the spawning as we did before. And so this guy's going to go to the right-hand side. So that was our first. Our second is going to go in the top right, which has a hero here. So he's going to move here, which also has a hero. And he's going to move here into the next empty spot. All right, now let's do our third one here, which is going to go down at the bottom of the map, which is open. And then our fourth one is going the bottom right, which has the forager. So it's going to move 1 and gang up on us right here. And our current round effect is going to be when revealed. All monsters at hero's location step 1 space clockwise. All right, that is a pain in the butt. So this one who has a spot shared with the hero, he's going to move 1 right, running away from us. And he is going to go on the top right there. So we got a huge chunk of monsters here. We got to deal with that. Okay, so we get to do some actions here. I'm trying to think of how we are going to get up here. Our forager could use an action and then slide up and start doing some damage there, I think. Because the fire tender can jump diagonally and then maybe hop over here and then kill the one with 2 damage. And then he could just tank this. So I think that's going to be our first move. The fire tender is going to jump diagonally. This is occupied, so we can go in one of the 2 adjacent spots. He's going to go here. Second action, I'm going to attack. And I'm going to kill the one with 2 damage. And put this in my hand. And this will allow us to just tank this. And then the fire tender can actually negate that 1 point of fire damage. So that's pretty good for him there. Happy with that. This guy's doing 2 fire damage. He's kind of nasty. I don't know how I'm actually going to deal with him, though. Because I can power slide up to the top right. But there's not really anyone who can... We might not be able to fight this guy this turn. Because we can power slide here over here. That's not going to do anything. Yeah. I think we're just going to power slide up here. Which is good. That's one action. Second action, I'm going to kill one of these guys. And our leader can move here or here. Doesn't really help us. The scout can jump here and then over the leader. That's not going to help us. I think we're just going to take advantage of some bolstering here. Go to our leader, spend 2 actions to let the forager do an extra action, which is going to kill another one of these guys. And then the scout, I'm actually going to use 2 actions here and do 2 forages. So there's 2 cards, so we'll just put these back in our hand. And that's going to clear out the forage deck. So we should hit some buffer. We're going to take some fire damage this turn, but I think we're going to be able to kind of weather that pretty well. So that is all of our hero actions. We're going to go into the monster attacks. So this is going to do 1 damage to the forager, who's now level 2, so she can just take that damage and not going to die. This one here is going to deal another 1 damage. The forager is the closest, but again, she has 2 health. If they're not doing that 2 damage in 1 attack, like it doesn't carry over between spaces, so she is still good. He is going to do 2 fire damage, so we're going to lose the top 2 cards of our deck and put it over into the forage pile. And now this one is going to deal 1 damage to the fire tender who can take it, and then 1 fire damage, but the fire tender's passive is going to let us negate that, so we are all good there. And then again, I'm being bad about my order of operations. These should have been put out at the bottom of the at the end of the action phase, but we'll just slide them down there now. Okay, so none of our heroes died this turn, which is nice. So we're not going to reinforce because we have nothing to reinforce here, and we're going to go back into spawning some creatures here. So let's spawn 4 of these. So top right is occupied, so it's going to move 1 into the right here. The second one is going to be put off to the side because we already hit our nighttime card again, which is usually not a good sign. It means we're probably running low on cards, so I'm going to have to try to kill some of these monsters. But nevertheless, we're going to flip it over to the number 2, so we only need to survive 2 more of these kind of cycles of the deck. We're going to put it at the bottom, and we're going to get a free upgrade here. So our free upgrade, I think I'm going to upgrade the scout because I believe the scout has a 1-cost bolster. See, it upgrades his bolster to only cost 1, which is pretty good. So I'm going to upgrade the scout. Okay, so let's keep spawning the rest of our monsters. This is number 2. So this one's going to go on the bottom right here. Number 3 is going to go on the far right. So we have a huge problem growing over here we're going to have to deal with. And the last one is going to go in the top, which is occupied, and it has 2 movements, so it's going to move 1 and 2, and oh my goodness, we have a giant wall of monsters on the right side of the camp. And now our round effect is going to be no more than 1 hero may forage, so we are going to be doing more defending and less foraging. So first and foremost, we really need a plan to deal with this wall of monsters, because that's going to be 6 fire damage, so we need to cull this group of monsters a little bit. And I don't know how we're going to do that because we don't really have a lot of good spaces for our characters to move. This is going to be so convoluted. All right, I'm going to jump with the fire tender, go up and to the left to the open spot, and then I'm going to use this second action to jump to the right. And this will make a wall for the forager to hit when she power slides. So let's go ahead and go to the forager. 1 action is going to be down here. Second action is going to be killing one of these monsters. I'm going to kill the one that's doing 2 fire damage. And now the scout here, I can go, let's bolster and kill another enemy. And then bolster again and kill one more enemy. And then that's his 2 actions. Now the leader can come down here and defend here and kill this enemy. Okay, so we still have 3 out there, but we really needed to cut down there. Like, we were going to take like game-losing amounts of fire damage, I think. So I think we played that pretty well. Okay, so I'm actually going to do this in the right order because we're going to take a bunch of fire damage still. I'm going to shuffle these, and they're going to go at the bottom of the deck here. And now let's resolve our attacks. This one's going to do 1 damage. Our heroes can take it there. This one's going to do 1 damage and 1 fire damage, so we're going to lose the top card. It's going to go into the forage deck. And then this one down here will do 1 damage. There's a tie here, so I could choose which one to get attacked. So the fire tender, since he has more health. And we're going to take another fire damage. And that is it for those enemies. We don't need to reinforce, so we're all set there. And we're going to go back to spawning some monsters. We're getting close to the end here. So the first one, again, is going to reveal the last nighttime. So we're going to reveal the 1 here. And now we're going to actually take this out of the game. And all we have to do is survive this next round. And we are going to successfully win the game. So we're going to remove that off. And we still have a free upgrade to do. So we're going to upgrade our leader. So now we have a full crew of leveled up heroes here. So, okay, this is our first spawn. It's going to go on to the right, which has a hero. He has 2 movement, so I'm going to go 1 and then 2. He's going to join this guy over here. Second spawn is going to go in the bottom right, which has a hero. So we got to put him there. God, it's happening again. Okay, now we're going to spawn the third one here, which is going to go in the top right and join this guy. And then the last one is going to go in the bottom right, which has a hero. So he's going to have 1 movement. He's going to go over here. Okay, so that's all of our spawning. We only have 1 card left, so we need to either replenish the deck or we can't take any fire damage because then we'll run out of our fire. And we cannot bolster this round. So last round, we really relied on the bolstering to like do stuff. So we're going to lose that ability this turn. So we're really going to have to kind of play things smart here and try to make it work. So this is going to be a tricky one, I think. Oh, the scout actually is not in a bad place because he can run and jump. And then jump over the forager and the fire tender to this bottom part of the map. So let's start with that. The scout is going to do his running jumps. He's going to move here and then jump over those 2. And now he's going to do 1 action and he's going to defend and beat one of these guys down. Our leader here can move up 1 and then it's going to do a defend action and kill this guy. And then our forager is going to attack 1, kill this guy, and then do a forage action to get 2 of these cards back from the forage pile. And I think we have enough buffer now with that being done. And then our fire tender has like his actions, but there's not really any good way. I could jump across. So I'm just going to use his and just forage twice. So we'll take the last 2 cards from this, and that's going to be all of our actions. So we'll shuffle these back, and now we're going to take some damage. So here we're going to take 2 fire damage, so these 2 are going to get discarded. And then we're actually going to take 2 damage, so this would actually take out the forager. So they level down, and then they get discarded, or not discarded, back in the tent. And then these guy over here, we're going to take another 2 fire damage. And then we're going to take 2 damage from them, so the scout would actually also get taken out. So it's a good thing this is the last round, because we were kind of running on fumes here. So we then have a chance to reinforce. So we could, throw this guy back out here. It doesn't matter because the game's about to end. And so with that, surviving the last turn after revealing the number 1 card, we have successfully survived a night in Embers. So one thing that really stuck out to me when I started playing this is that it feels really thematic. Usually button shy games are not like super heavily thematic, right? There's only so much you can do with 18 cards, but I feel like this one really kind of honed into it really well. The mechanic of the maneuvering kind of being puzzling and difficult, I feel like it ties into the, oh my gosh, we're being like ambushed, like all this is happening in the middle of the night. You're kind of tripping over each other in like this really confined quarters. It feels like claustrophobic. Like I love the feeling of these enemies starting to find the weaknesses in how you're like holding off this area and how they start to pile on in areas where there's no heroes, right? So you have to like maneuver and figure out how you're going to address those issues. I think it has a really nice sense of stress and tension. And I just love the maneuvering puzzle. Like you could see in the gameplay we just did, there's so many fun little things you can do where you feel really clever in setting up your heroes in a way where you can like, oh, just set them up in just the right way and get people where you need to be. And even the level up system where like the longer the night goes on, right, you're getting more experience fighting these things, you get a little bit stronger. So while the monsters start to pile up, there's a nice little push and pull where your heroes are also able to get a little bit stronger as the game goes on. So I felt like really like strong thematic connection, stronger than I usually feel from most Button Shy games. I think that the only negative gameplay wise I have of it is that I think it's a little bit on the easier side. And I know this is like having your cake and eating it too. I usually complain about these being too hard. But I do feel like there's a pretty high chance of win rate here. I think here, even when we had some sticky situations, we were still able to kind of play around it. So I think if you are more experienced, I think jumping right to the harder difficulty is probably a good idea. The only change with hard is that when you hit those different rounds where you get the free level up, you don't get that free level up. So your heroes are a little bit weaker. You need to spend those actions to promote them rather than just getting them passively, which I think does crank up the difficulty kind of just the right amount. But in general, I think this is a little bit more of an easier, more approachable difficulty-wise in the Button Shy lineup. I also really love the, I don't know if it's right to say the board, but like the orientation of the cards. That it's kind of like this 8-spoke wheel around the fire and you're moving your heroes around it. I just find that to be really engaging and a really interesting puzzle to work around this wheel. And again, the maneuvering and the positioning of monsters and heroes, it works really well in this like 8-position circle that you work around the fire. And again, ties into that thematic feeling of like, okay, we are like huddled around this like campfire and we're trying to figure things out or just around that. Now, the other thing I need to mention, and I think this is something I take for granted because in general, Button Shy games look really solid. They usually have very good art, very good graphic design. But I cannot overstress how much I really love the art style of Embers. From the hero cards that have this very kind of orange, yellow, warm glow of the fire, kind of contrasted with the like kind of coolish dark background that they have. The actual hero cards, when they level up, where like they kind of break the border and they start to like seep out from the portraits, like showing that they're like getting more powerful versus their level 1 side, and the kind of like cool art that changes when you flip them over. That feels really good. The monsters. Oh my god, I love the monsters. Like, these are legitimately, like, terrifying cards. This might be the scariest art I've seen in a Button Shy game. They kind of remind me of the rat creatures from Bone, despite being way more gruesome than that. But I absolutely love the monsters. They look so cool, they look so intimidating, and I love them. And even the campfire cards, where they're kind of, like, ripped up and it kind of has like this outline of like a flickering flame starting to go out. It just all feels really cool. It has this cool kind of like dark fantasy feeling to it. And I'm just so amazed by the amount of personality that is in this game. And truly, this is like one of my favorite looking Button Shy games I have ever played. I think it looks just awesome. And the way that it marries that kind of dark fantasy art with the kind of theme of trying to survive the nighttime against monsters, it just works really, really well for me. So I have to say, this is one of my absolute favorite solo Button Shies that I've played in a good while, I think. The art style, the theme, the feeling that it really invokes while you're playing with it. So if you're a fan of solo, if you're a fan of this kind of like almost like wave survival, dark fantasy sort of thing, definitely check out Embers. I will have a link to the campaign down in the description below for you to check out. I'd also like to thank Button Shy for providing a preview copy for this video, and while they do provide that, there is no other editorial input or review before making the video, and all the opinion is my own. So thank you guys again for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye.